everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I'm now officially back from the holidays. Summer is over, holidays are over, and I'm back in my studio. So autumn is upon us, and I thought that it has been a while that we sat down and had a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever your favorite beverage is, and have a little art chat. Speaking of autumn, for me it is a period of the year where the vacation is behind me. I'm going back to the studio and thinking over what I will do with the remainers of the year, get everything planned out for the rest of the year basically. I'm aware that while I might like very damp and cool weather, this might not be the case for everyone, and I know quite a lot of people and artists who get a little bit depressed when the summer is over and when they feel kind of a creative down maybe. I think it's normal when you do this year in, year out, that it kind of over time at different periods loses some of its magic. But this state can be very impactful and very harmful, both from a perspective of your mental health, but also in regard as what it does to your work. I personally think that everything that we as artists go through in our life is bound to somehow be reflected in our work, and if we're not feeling well and feeling down and depressed, it kind of shows, maybe not always in the best possible way. And I mean, I know artists that use their bad experiences, their pain, their sentiment of loss to do something really beautiful with it in their artwork. But I'm talking more of how it can impact the quality of what you do if you are not managing to transform your negative feelings into something beautiful, but you are getting eaten up by it, and it shows that you're not really inspired by what you are doing, and this is harmful not only to you living the situation, but also to the client that you're doing the work for, or the different projects that you're involved in. So from every perspective, it is important to find your own life hacks, maybe how to blow past these kind of periods. And I imagine there being quite a lot of videos out there that address the same problem. I didn't watch any of it, so I hope this will not be horrendously redundant, but it feels personal to me, and this is something I had time to reflect upon. I went through a period where I felt not inspired anymore, where I didn't pick up a brush for 2 months, I think it was. So the aim of this video will be for me to share my takeout of this experience and what helped me battle through this honestly not very pleasant period of the year. What techniques, what ideas, what I did basically to find painting as exciting and as enchanting as it should be. So in my case, it was at the beginning of this year, actually starting maybe by the end of last year, because as you might know, I had an incredible opportunity last year where I got to have my own solo exhibition in Orléans. But by the time that I got offered this opportunity, I definitely didn't have enough stock of artworks to fill the space that was offered to me. So this was a bit unfortunate, but it was not an opportunity I felt that I could turn down. So I threw my time schedule out of the window and got cracking. And while I managed to do it and was very happy with the results, by the end of the exhibition I didn't feel excited or as proud maybe as I should. I didn't focus on all the artwork sold. I didn't focus on the fact that it was incredible to even being given this opportunity, maybe. I was just so tired and, well, burnt out is a bit strong for what it was, I think. Basically, it felt like an assembly line work or a mass production. So I didn't get to enjoy the process as much because I was so rushed, and that made the process a bit less magical for me. And this is really, I think, what is important and what shows in all of our works is whether we feel inspired by what we do. Without going into extremes like this, it still remains important to not be too strongly set in your ways and find ways, on the contrary, to stay innovative and to be surprised by what you do and surprise yourself. Keep things new. This is what I think will help you enjoy the process and maybe rekindle your love with this profession. So I'm going to share 5 tips or 5 techniques with you that were really helpful for me, as the aim is to keep things fresh and new. Tip number 1 is a very obvious one. I would give the advice of trying to work in different media, especially when you are maybe too into your routine. If, like me, you are mainly working with oil paints, then maybe give gouache a try, or pastels or watercolors. As the techniques are very different, not only will it help you to have a fresh approach because you are learning a completely different technique. Sometimes other media turn your techniques upside down. For instance, very basic stuff that you probably already know, but in oil paints you would traditionally go from the darkest color to the lightest color, while in watercolor it's the exact opposite way around. So this makes you maybe not question what you're doing, but being concentrated again on what you're doing. You're not so much doing it mechanically and automatically, but you're more thoughtful of what and how you are producing your forms and colors and textures. In my case, I have the lino prints to alternate things. For instance, when I'm painting, I'm more concentrated on color, whereas while I'm cutting the lino, I'm all about the textures. It gives me some variety that helps it not being too much of the same every day. And if you're especially lucky, maybe it can also enrich and change the way that you're working in your primary medium. So once again, in my example, when I'm going from the oil paint to lino cutting, of course I do get more excited about working with the different textures, but in the background of my head I'm like, okay, but now usually I would really use the colors in order to make this scene work. So how can I do this with lino? And the different techniques are maybe mutually enriching, so it will further your purpose as an artist, I think, if you keep doing this for a while, alternating different media. This is kind of an extra benefit from this way of doing things and keeping them new and fresh. Now, the second advice would be to experiment with different genres. So once again, if you are specialized in landscape painting, maybe venture a bit out and try out some portraiture or still lifes, whatever works for you. But as the way of composing and choosing the theme of your creation is not the same exactly between the different genres, it can also help you to keep a fresh eye, or maybe mix the genres a little bit when you go back to what you usually do. Maybe if you are mainly about portraiture, it will help you to do some landscapes, and when you come back to it, you might, instead of doing one colored backgrounds, include a landscape, or let's see how they can intertwine and work together. If you're about landscapes, then test out portrait paintings, then go back to landscape, and all of a sudden you can go like, oh, how nice, I don't care about the big majestic vistas anymore, and all I want to do are like zooms into details and more intimate scenes. So, you know, I'm not saying that this is bound to happen, but I don't know what will happen exactly for you when you experiment with the different techniques. I'm just saying that changing your point of view, changing your approach, and the thing that you normally would focus on might not only help you to get the perspective that you might need at times, you know, when you're too much set in your ways, in your routine and stuff, but also, yeah, bring back the novelty and remind you of how infinite the possibilities are that we have at our disposal when we create. Now, the third advice that I would share with you: give yourself thematical challenges. To illustrate my point, I'm going to go back to my personal experience and to the beginning of this year, where it was like, I can't find one scene, one photograph inspiring enough. What I ended up doing as well is I would go into our local forest, for instance, and as nothing in particular caught my eye or, you know, inspired me, I would go, today I'm going to draw different textures of bark, or a certain type of vegetation, a certain plant, a certain flower, but it can also be, well, for this week I'm trying to paint at sunrise and see how the sunrise impacts the colors. It won't be real creations, of course, but it will give you some directions in doing your studies. And of course, once again, I'm taking my personal example because I'm mostly all about landscapes, but I imagine it being also possible to do in still life if, I don't know, you have a challenge about one certain fruit or one certain texture maybe. So you might do a challenge for a week. For instance, I'm painting or I'm doing studies of different types of metal, like, I don't know, brass, silver, tin cans, to help you stay in the game in a way and not go through too long periods of time where you're completely disconnected from your art and from any kind of creative production. This is, I think, very important and very helpful because, like everything else, although it might feel good in the moment to take some time off and then come back when you're inspired, I think a lot of it also depends on yourself as well. I mean, I'm not encouraging you to force yourself to do it, but it's like morning exercise. I don't know, it's like going for a run. 15 minutes every day or every 2 days is still better than 1 hour once a month. I feel like the same goes for the creative process. You have to ease your way in and do little things. By encouraging yourself to do something, you might rediscover beauty in the smallest things that you didn't think about at that particular moment when you felt ill-inspired. And this takes me to the fourth advice, and that would be a little bit more unconventional, right? I would encourage you to experiment with different styles. I feel like what we are used to hearing is copy the old masters and copy the really well-known works in order to train yourselves in these different techniques, in how the great masters did it. This is what you're encouraged to do a lot in different videos, in art school, in seminars. Now, what I would want you to do is to go further than that. Concentrate on those artists whose style has nearly nothing to do with what you're doing. Of course, not to the point where you would feel aversion for what the other artist does. That's not what I would want you to do. But definitely try to go out of your comfort zone and dabble your feet into something that you wouldn't really normally do. If you're a very figurative painter, maybe this is the time to try and experiment with abstracts. And this doesn't mean that by the end of this period where you are basically forcing yourself to experiment with different types of things in order to rekindle your love with painting or any other kind of art. But, you know, it's like in the saying, before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes. And this is exactly what I'm encouraging you to do. Not to not judge them, but by avoiding what you would naturally, spontaneously do every single time when you are creating, by putting on those goggles that give you a completely different perspective and a completely different approach and way of doing things, it might be not only fun and liberating, but might also enrich what you're doing in the long run. Once again, I'm not at all saying that you are a landscape painter because you didn't try out abstracts before, and if you did, you might actually like it. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the point of this, all those exercises that I'm talking about, being get out of your routine and make the creation of art being a novelty to you again. Be in a state of mind where you know that anything is possible. When we all started out, I imagine, we were all excited. To get this feeling back regularly is the aim of all of it, I think. So even if you are like me, and like I think the majority of us, somehow biased, somehow we all have some artists to an extent, I think, that we don't particularly appreciate, or where we think I'm not getting what the fuss is all about. It might change your perspective. The advantage here being, as you don't particularly love the style of the artist that you would be forced to emulate in this exercise, you won't have the closeness to it. So you won't be as under pressure maybe of getting it right. It won't be frustrating. Point being, it should be liberating. And you could always, you know, meet me halfway here and take an artist that you appreciate but who does things in a very different way than you do. This is what I kind of subconsciously did. I rediscovered an artist that I really appreciated all those years ago, and then I went into an exhibition a couple months ago. I stumbled upon one of his paintings and it was like, it is really incredible. I mean, how could I have forgotten? Well, not forgotten maybe per se, but these were not the references that I was aiming for or revisiting regularly. And my mind was blown and it was like, okay, I'll try to adopt maybe several ways of him handling the color combinations or the composition, and I experimented a lot, and this is how my bigger 80 by 80 centimeter paintings came to be, actually. Do I show you? Let me show you to illustrate my saying here. Okay, so this is what I usually, naturally, spontaneously go for, right? Classical style with rather muted, earthy, natural colors. Might be an intimate scene, a close-up like this, might be more of a vista, but this is, I might say, very typical for me, okay? And this is what I created during this more difficult phase of this year, I would say, where I experimented a lot with a different style. After revisiting that one painter that I told you about, it's very different, but kind of still has the same character traits, right? This is what I'm encouraging you to do. It's not copying another style to the dot. It's not imitation. It's inspiration that I'm trying to help you rekindle, right? So I took his way of putting contrasty colors together, get the idea behind what he did rather than copying. So I try to understand his approach and make it enrich the way that I do things rather than painting in a very faithful and traditional way the landscape, the way that I see it before my eyes. I would like to paint dream of the fairy pools. It is the feeling that the fairy pools are giving me, this kind of dreamlike surroundings that are completely breaking every law of physics, right? Because here the light is coming out from the water. This is not something I would have done before this year. And all those techniques that I told you about help me not only get back into the game, but actually I think get more creative, being better at what I do. I cannot recommend this technique highly enough. And now to the fifth and last advice that I would give you. And this is one that goes beyond just the way that you do your artwork. And it is working seasonally. How should I explain this one? It's more of a state of mind than a technique in itself, but both go together. The whole point of all of this is to maintain the feeling of novelty when you are creating throughout the years, and the different ways to avoid getting too routine, too set in your ways. So if you see your surroundings, the weather conditions, the colors, the temperature, everything, nature basically around you changing, and you focus on those changes, I think this will truly help you mix it up, because you're focusing on things that are shifting gradually throughout the year. And you can do it in so many different ways. It can be a mindset where you wouldn't necessarily focus on the same subject throughout the year. It could be your color palette that is slightly different throughout the year. Of course, landscape painters and plein air painters in particular are already bound to work that way. If this is your case, then maybe try to accentuate this even more. So, of course, your color palette will change if you are painting the same forest or the same field on plein air throughout the year. We all agree on that. But maybe take it further, maybe try to look for those really characteristic elements in the landscape that will undeniably do the setting for you. Maybe accentuate the presence of mushrooms. What do you do? Maybe the presence of birds in the spring. Try to concentrate on those little things that are proper to every season. Try to feel the magic of the change that nature already gives you. I think this is the best source of variety that we have on Earth, right? It's nature itself and the plethora of ways of changing all the different details in the landscape, in the vegetables and fruit that we eat. This would be maybe impactful for still life painters. Maybe try to associate a type of object that is seasonal. I don't know, a miner's lamp, which would maybe fit best with the darker month of the year, or a gardener's gloves for spring. I think you got the general idea. So now it's your turn to see how you can apply that to your type of work, your genre and your style. But I think this might be a good silver lining, you know, of ideas to how to introduce change and variety into your creational practice. That's it, guys. I really hope this was helpful for you. These are tricks that I, found myself or developed myself. Maybe I just reinvented the wheel and this was all already out there. I don't know. At any rate, it was helpful for me. These are all things that I myself did in order to get out of my slumber. So I really hope it will be as helpful to you and that you might find a way to adapt these to each and every one of you, to your particular taste, styles and ways of working. So I hope you enjoyed this little art chat with me. If you have any other tips that you would want to share with the community, please, please, please leave a comment and share your tips with all of us. This is the point of YouTube for artists. This should be the community, the creative community. Help each other out here. It's a tough world. If you want to see what inspires me in particular, then please consider following me on Instagram. I will leave the link in the description and on the screen. I would be very happy if you join me there as well, because I'm in no way redundant on both channels. These are very different contents here and there. You might discover some of my photographic work from my different trips. And as you know, I'm not only working on plein air, but I mostly work in my studio, so I am doing this with the help of the photographs that I take. If you liked my video, please consider giving it a like or share it with your friends and family, and leave a comment below. The channel is still very fresh, so we're a small community, and it would help me immensely if you could, recommend this channel to anyone you know who might be interested. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you in my next video. Until then, I wish you all a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Cheers!